Well, you're only as young as you feel, or so the saying goes. Some doctors are finding that feeling might tell them a lot more about your health than your actual age. What does that mean? Well, Dr. Joe is here to try and explain. Doc, when we're asking how old do you feel, should we really be asking someone how healthy do you feel?
Look, it's a really interesting point, Michael, and the most important thing is actually how healthy you feel. If you think about it, the lion in the jungle, the sheep in the paddock, or the dog running around doesn't get up in the morning and wonder about or worry about how old it is. So chronological age is because as humans we have a clock and we can measure things, and we have this sort of preconceived idea that when you're 30 you should be a certain way, 40, 50, 60 and how it goes. But we also know that people talk about 50 as the new 40, 60 as the new 50 and so it goes. So our concept of age also changes. You know, a few hundred years ago you were lucky to get to 40. Now people are living well into their 80s, 90s and even beyond 100.
So is it a bit like the chicken egg scenario? If you're feeling younger, it may make you more active and that keeps you feeling better. Untangling this, how difficult is that?
Look, you can't really untangle it because it is quite circular, and what work has shown in the US, and some of it's been done in China too, is that if you say to people, look, you look really good for your age, or you're really sharp for your age, or you're fitter than average for your age, they actually perform better in subsequent sort of tests that you get them to do. Equally, if you say to somebody, oh, you're looking really old, that can potentially have a negative effect. So, but equally, if people feel a bit better, if somebody feels like they've got a lot of energy and you ask them, well, how do you feel? I feel really good. I'm not concerned about my age. I might then do the sort of things that help keep me healthier for longer. So, yeah, I don't think you can or try to unscramble it.
How much of a role do genetics play?
Look, genetics does help. But the argument about nature and nurture is from time immemorial. So genetics is what you start with, but the concept of predeterminalism is not correct. There are certain conditions that have a strong genetic tendency, and obviously we get some of our half our genes from our mother and half from our father. But it's also what you do with those genes. So it's a useful start. If everybody in your family's lived to 100, it's a useful start for you. But that doesn't mean that if you smoke and drink and don't exercise and don't look after yourself that you'll get to 100. Neither, if you haven't got great genetics, doesn't make it impossible.
So, Dr. Joe, just to finish off, should we stop obsessing about how young we look, perhaps, and listen to people who pay us compliments about how young we look? Does that make sense?
Look, we really shouldn't be fussed about what our age is because, you know what, there's nothing we can do about it. We cannot stop the clock. That is a given. What we can do, though, is make the most of each day. We can look after our health and be as best as we can be at any age, whilst recognising that time does move on. But time moving on doesn't mean that we have to say, well, I've got to stop doing this or stop doing that just because a certain number of minutes has elapsed.
Dr. Joe, you're looking great today.
You too, Michael.
Thanks for coming in. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.